Hello, beautiful people. You're listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, and I'm so excited about my guest today, who I never get to spend enough time with. He is the chef owner of Peg Leg Porker, which is it is barbecue. It is now bourbon. It is a state of mind located in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome, Carey.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I appreciate you having me.
What is bringing you to New York City today?
Yeah, I am doing an event this weekend at Pig Beach. It's a benefit for the family of Jeff McNair, who passed away last year suddenly at a very young age. And so there are 11 of the top pitmasters in the country have come together to raise money for his wife and daughter. And so it's something that's near and dear to our heart. We've all cooked at Pig Beach, and so we want to do a great job for his family.
Okay, let's go right into this because barbecue people have the biggest hearts in the world, and it's such a family, and you all take care of each other in a really particular way. Why is that about barbecue in particular?
You know, I think barbecue really stems from family and from community, and that's what it means to us. It's a lifestyle, and so. You know, the fact that barbecue takes such a long time to cook, it gives you time to be around your friends and family and spend that time visiting and telling stories and having drinks. And so we've built a really strong community, I feel like, across the country. And when somebody's in need, then you can generally count on some barbecue people to be around.
Oh, I've seen what Stan Hayes does with Operation Barbecue Rescue.
They do an amazing job.
Yeah, so if people aren't familiar with that, they roll up into, in the wake of natural disasters, pull up some rigs and start feeding people, and it's all volunteer, and they've served, what, millions?
Over 2 million meals now. And so it's just an unbelievable effort of people coming together. If the pitmasters can't make it, then generally they donate money. But so many of them donate their time. Stan does it full time. John David Wheeler is a huge supporter. So many other people have been huge supporters of it. And they, like you said, they wheel into town in disaster areas and they just feed people.
Yeah.
It's no bureaucracy. It is, you need a hot meal, we got one for you.
Yeah, there is no question there. I mean, I always think barbecue is, it gets talked about as such a great leveler because, you know, people from all different parts of society, economic circumstances, race, religion can come together over this particular food.
Yeah, it really is. It like you said, it's a leveler. It brings people from every walk of life together. From the richest to the poorest, there's truly a seat for everybody at the table in barbecue.
Well, I remember John T. Edge talking about like you go into the parking lot of somewhere and there's Mercedes-Benzes and then old beaters
absolutely,
and everybody has to wait in line and do their thing.
Yeah,
but and I'm also thinking that there is such a great tradition of barbecue people taking care of each other. Some years back, Rodney Scott's place burned down, his original flagship place. It's in South Carolina. Hemingway, South Carolina. And there was a thing that happened that was Rodney in exile.
Yes, he went on a 5-city tour, 5 or 6 cities, and a lot of folks came together to raise money for him. And it was headed by the SFA. Really helped out with that and helped him rebuild that pit house.
Yeah, for people who don't know, also the Southern Foodways Alliance, the SFA, is a force of good and smoke and goodness. And so we have just, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but just yesterday in real time, we announced the Best New Chefs class of 2019. And there is a pitmaster named Brian Furman on there. How does the barbecue community feel about being recognized on a list like that when I think, you know, at least in media, barbecue is celebrated, but it's kept in a separate box often from fine dining?
It is. So there is, I'm thrilled that Brian made the list. Brian's a great guy. He's got a great place. Incidentally, his place just burned down in Atlanta.
He's still got the Charlotte place.
He's still got his Savannah place. But so he's in the process of trying to rebuild, and people have had fundraisers for he and his family. Something like a food and wine list, naming him one of the top 10, I think is outstanding. He also was a semifinalist for the Beard Awards this year, as were a couple of other pitmasters.
Yeah.
My opinion on that is, and I've made it clear in the press, and not all my fellow pitmasters agree with me. I think that in the Beard Awards, that they should have a separate category for pitmasters, not in every region, but one nationwide. Because I think what we do is very different. It's not less.
Yeah.
It's just different. And if you're going to separate the pastry chefs from the bakers, then why would you not separate the pitmasters from the chefs? That's my opinion on the, not on the best chefs, but on the Beard Awards.
It's an interesting thing to me because then with Beard Awards, you're taking the whole restaurant into consideration, and some of the places that do the absolute best barbecue are places where you go and you get it and you sit outside. And I remember going into Rodney Scott's place in Hemingway, South Carolina. They're individually wrapped like slices of cake that were, God, I want one of those right now.
Yeah.
Like made by church ladies. There was like a leak on the floor, and it's pretty humble little place that people were lining up outside, and we went and like across the street to like sit at like a park bench, and it was the happiest I'd been in ages.
Yeah.
But that's and it's a different metric. So I hadn't thought about it that way before, but that makes sense.
Well, and like I said, that's my opinion. That I have had debates with fellow pitmasters who are not of the same opinion.
Yeah.
We've had 2 pitmasters win it. Aaron Franklin was the first, and then Rodney won it last year. And both guys absolutely deserving of the award.
Sure.
My personal opinion is that it would be, I think that the genre is getting enough attention to where it warrants a separate category.
Oh, yeah, and it gets attention in various ways. So
Yes, I'm sure.
I was reading up yesterday that a piece sort of resurfaced of yours. Let's talk about barbecue snobbery.
All right,
and
absolutely.
So lists comes out. The lists come out all the time in different metric forms. Some places aggregate all the Yelp scores. Some places actually, there are a few places in the country that actually have a critic who goes around to all the different barbecue places, like God bless Daniel Vaughn, who goes all over Texas to do that. But otherwise, the metric for what gets high on a list is specious in a lot of places, and people have very, very strong opinions on these. So you originally wrote something in response to, was it a Texas Monthly, or where was the original story?
No, the original story where I wrote, the piece that I wrote was called A Letter to Armchair Barbecue Critics. And they originally, in 2014, Nashville got named the #1 barbecue city in the United States.
It's a really
by Travel and Leisure.
Yeah.
And it got got a lot of responses.
Imagine Texas had something to say about it, North Carolina.
Texas did, Memphis did, North Carolina did. And so, and that's, I understand it. We're all passionate about barbecue. The gist of my letter to those armchair critics was, we don't make hateful comments like this about each other, and we do this for a living. We're the experts.
Yeah.
You're a fan, which is great, but we don't try and tear each other down like this. Why would you try and tear us down as a community or as individual states or cities or establishments? And so I wrote that letter in 2014. It elicited a lot of very positive responses from my fellow barbecue people all around the country and all around the world. I just got named top barbecue, best barbecue place in the state of Tennessee.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. By Southern Living.
Yeah.
And most of the comments were positive, but we had somebody in Memphis that was a freelancer that put out a tweet that was basically said, "What the fuck? You know, what is this fuckery?" And it was retweeted by several other people, and it started in on some Memphis to Nashville bashing, and then, how could he possibly have the best barbecue? He's not in Memphis, and that's okay. I've got very thick skin, but so I decided to write a couple of days ago a letter to Armchair Barbecue Critics Part 2. And so I just kind of reiterated what I had said in the first letter was that, I'm very close friends with a lot of the barbecue owners.
Y'all roll deep.
In Memphis, and they're close personal friends. We respect each other's businesses. We refer business to them. They refer business to us with people who are on a barbecue tour. And the same way in Nashville.
Yeah.
My competitors are also my friends.
Yeah.
And you know that Pat Martin and I are close friends and have been since before either one of us had a restaurant.
Love that man and his whole family.
Yeah. and then, our other barbecue competitors with Edley's and Jack's and the Jim and Nick's folks are all friends of ours. And we send each other business all the time. We're closed on Sunday, so we send people to the other places that aren't. And it's disheartening to see people who don't do it for a living trying to create a rift in the community where it doesn't exist.
It's a weird, hurtful thing, and it comes out of this misguided fandom. I mean, and you can transpose it to all different things, to music, to whatever.
Sure.
Like, if you're a fan of this, how can you, possibly like the? It's messed up because we're really in it because you love things. It should be about getting people to good and better and more.
Yeah. Look, it's not a requirement that you hate somebody else's barbecue in order to love mine.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line is you don't have to hate somebody else to love me. And it's okay. There's a lot of great barbecue. They're all different styles, and everybody has their own take on it. And that's what makes barbecue great is that you don't have to have a favorite. It's just like music. I mean, somebody asks you what your favorite album is. Well, hell, you got 10 or 20 that you love.
Yeah.
And so barbecue's the same way. It's not there are barbecue competitions.
Yeah.
Being in the restaurant business is hard enough without people shitting on you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so
I agree. Like, I hate that question, Beatles or Stones. I'm like, both.
Yeah.
They're both great, and why wouldn't you have both of those in your arsenal?
Why do I have to choose?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, people wear it as this weird badge. And it's kind of like this. For a while, it was like this bro-y kind of thing. Like, people, it is so funny because, like, people, whenever I write anything about barbecue or do anything, people who sort of don't know me online try to swagger at me. And I'm like, I don't need to prove my cred, but if you do want a picture like of this thing, I go to this barbecue symposium and speak at it every year that Amy Mills has and stuff. I'm like, do you want to see me hanging out with the Pitmasters? Do you want this thing? And like, it's just weird. It's like in place of a personality. Sometimes that people have this, and you were saying bourbon has that too.
Bourbon does the same thing. You get bourbon snobs, I've had people call, we're a non-distilling producer, so we buy bourbon. And when we debarrel it, we put our finish on it, which is unique to us. It's a hickory charcoal finish after it's debarreled. And we've won several awards with it. We're proud of it. 80% of the bourbons out there on the shelf come out of 4 distilleries. And so I don't feel any shame in being a non-distilling producer right now. We produce a great product. But I've had people call me a faker, and people dog me because we weren't distilling, and I just look at them and say, well, that's my product on the shelf that's selling through. Where is your product? Or do you own a bourbon company? I'm sorry. Maybe you do. Maybe it doesn't seem like you do. And so why are you dogging me who actually owns a bourbon company?
It's funny. I think people are insecure about a lot of things, and they take obsessive fandom about something as in lieu of really feeling confident about themselves. So I do think it comes from a place of insecurity. In that same way, when you're a little kid, maybe you have the best baseball cards. Maybe you have.
Sure, no.
I was thinking, that movie Ghost World?
I don't know that movie.
Oh,
But,
okay, it's this thing where it's about obsessive record collectors,
oh,
and it's
okay.
the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my take is, if you really love something and somebody doesn't know about it, don't make them feel silly about that. Be like, hey, I get to introduce you to something really fantastic. And
Yeah, the best champions for barbecue or for bourbon are the ones that want to explore and try new things, and hey, what's your favorite bourbon? I don't know. I hope I hadn't tasted it yet.
yeah,
I'm still out there tasting everything, and I want to take in as much as I can. And for me with barbecue, when I was young, and I've been cooking for a long time, and when I was younger, there was what I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And then as I got older and I had competed and been involved in a lot more barbecue and cooked a lot more, there's what I knew then, which was more, but still not a lot. And then, after running a restaurant for the past 6 years and feeding, hundreds of thousands of people,
even imagine how
there's what I know now. And you know what? In 10 years, there'll be what I know then. It's a constant evolution. And if you really want to embrace a culture like barbecue or bourbon, then realize that you're constantly learning, and it's not absolute.
I'd like to think that there's so much more out there for me in anything that
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the role of mentorship in this too, because this is a very old art,
Sure.
centuries old art that
Yeah.
probably came about from survival for
Yeah.
a lot of people, and it's a poor people food, and
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. But there's this again outside notion of like, well, it's my secret barbecue thing, and when we. The people on the inside are so generous with their knowledge because they know what it takes is time.
Sure. It's time and temperature. Barbecue is not rocket science. It is time and temperature. There are a lot of flavors that you can incorporate into it. There's a lot of styles. At the end of the day, time, temperature, consistency is really what counts. I learned from my Uncle Bruce, was the first person that really took me under his wing and started teaching me. The first thing I learned how to smoke was a turkey, and we did a smoked turkey. My Uncle Bruce had a great one, and we called him Uncle Juice. I thought it's because he drank a lot of orange juice. It turns out he was a raging alcoholic.
Oh dear, problematic
he was
nicknames.
sober for 20 years before he died. So I don't want to give any bad perception of my Uncle Bruce. He was a dynamite guy, but that's where I first learned, and then I joined a barbecue team and learned.
Explain barbecue team to people.
Okay, so I went down with my wife's family to the Memphis In May World Championship barbecue competition.
This is a big deal.
It's the Super Bowl of swine. Now there's, I think, 247 teams in it. The park stretches for a solid mile.
The smells must be.
It's unbelievable. My uncle competed in Memphis In May #1, and I still have the apron from that. That was actually one. A lot of people say, see the year of the woman this year and everything. Memphis In May #1 was actually won by a black woman named Bessie. And a lot of people don't know that. Well, I don't know a whole lot about Bessie. I've got the newspaper clipping from where she won that competition. I think second place was a woman as well.
Oh, wow.
And but it was under a big tent in front of the Orpheum, and it smoked up the whole tent. Everybody kind of had to get out of the tent. My uncle told me a story about this guy from Missouri that came in bragging that he was going to beat everybody's ass in this competition. And he took a whole hog and hung it from a tripod in chicken wire over an open fire like a cochon de lait.
Yeah.
And he started proceeding to trash talk and drink quarts of beer. And he passed out in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden, everybody woke up. There were sirens going off, and the Memphis Fire Department was hosing down this guy's hog, which had caught on fire, and flames were shooting up about 15, 20 feet in the air.
Oh, my God.
They said when they woke up, he packed up and took off.
No one's ever seen him
Never,
again.
never seen him since.
Oh, my God. So competition is an interesting way to come up, too, because it's a funny thing. Competition is. I've been a judge. I'm a KCBS certified judge, and I've judged the Jack before.
Yep.
And that barbecue is so different than
Very
the
different.
barbecue that I think of when I go to my favorite places, especially throughout the South,
Sure.
where there is time, where there is all this, where you can taste the smoke, you can taste this stuff. I go to competitions and I get frustrated because so much of it is about injections.
Oh, yeah.
It tastes like fruit.
It's a bastardized version of traditional barbecue, and I've said that for years. And that's it's interesting because when part of my mentorship and growing up, I was on
Yeah.
a team with Ernie Miller and Trip Murray called Hog. Well, first it was the Rolling Wonder Pigs. Then we got the first year I went down there, they got kicked out of the competition and had to sit out a year. And we came back and started Hog Wild, and those guys were the captains. And I cooked under them for about 12 years and learned a lot from those guys.
Wow.
But it used to be down there that you would cook what you would cook for your friends and family. You put it in a box and you sent it to the judges, and that was it. It was traditional barbecue. Then they would come and judge on site. It was a lot of showmanship, a lot of you can lie, you can do whatever. That's all part of the rules. You can exaggerate and say whatever you want. But you turned in what you would normally cook for your friends and family. Over the years, competitions like the KCBS circuit really became a big machine and really made competitions accessible to everybody, whereas Memphis was always just kind of for the big boys.
It seemed that way.
And they did a great job with that and spreading the word of barbecue and the gospel, but their competitions were very different. And that started to creep into the Memphis in May. And so now it's kind of it's about that one bite.
Yeah.
And it's heavy seasoned, heavy injected, or most of it, not all of it, but it's a different type of barbecue than you're going to serve to your friends and family.
Yeah, and I don't know if the general public knows about that that particular distinction.
I don't know
much.
that they do.
Yeah,
Some do, but not all,
And that you can go to a barbecue competition and walk away hungry because so when I was a judge, we would get our boxes and you have to pace yourself because that is a lot of barbecue to eat in a sitting. So people would sort of like stand around the edge of the pen and we would hand out things to them. 'Cause I hate wasting food. Nothing.
Oh, sure.
It was beaten into me by the nuns in Catholic school. You do not waste food.
No,
And so-
absolutely.
Yeah, but those are some long nights at the competition.
They are. I spent many a night on the river in Memphis in May. Many a night under a blue tarp after drinking heavily and thinking that I was going to die of hypothermia.
Yeah. There's some cold nights out there in barbecue, and you think like, oh, it's a smoker and stuff. Like, I have frozen my ass off.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So then there's a camaraderie that comes up from the competitions then too. You cross-pollinate your teams. It's not, there might be some ribbing, some whatever, but people fundamentally, like if somebody needed something, you would give it to them, right?
Typically, the culture for the Memphis in May cooks has always been share, help out. Okay, if I didn't make the finals, but Kat did, I need to go and ask her if there's anything that I have that she needs for her final presentation.
Yeah.
I've seen in other competitions where people are very secretive. They're huddling over their smokers. They're saying, "Don't come and look at what I'm doing." They call it shigging, and that's when you're trying to look at somebody else's stuff. And
I want to read it like all the dialect of this.
oh yeah, well we never saw that much at Memphis in May. You see some secrecy, but for the most part, most people down there are pretty open about what they're doing and about what goes on, and pretty open with recipes. We have been over the years. We'll take people onto our team and show them what we do and help them out and teach them what we know. If you're not teaching that next generation, then the next generation's not going to have good barbecue.
Yeah, that would be a crime.
Yeah, so we don't give I'm not giving out the recipe for my dry seasoning, but I will explain enough about it to somebody to where they can formulate their own to their own taste. And I think that's what this community's about.
It's so personal. Barbecue is so personal, and I know that like my husband is from near the Lexington area.
Oh yeah.
So that is a really definitive thing for him. I grew up in Kentucky, but we didn't really have barbecue in the part where I grew up. So people
Right.
are like, oh, assume you like the mutton and stuff.
Yep.
And I've had it since then, and I absolutely love it. But people become really partisan
yeah.
about that kind of thing. So then how did you go from the competition thing to opening up your own place?
I'd been doing it for a long time. I'd been kicking around the idea of opening my own place. I had been in healthcare. I had been in IT, but my love was always for barbecue and for that lifestyle. And so,
And it is a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle. And so, finally, a opportunity presented itself where I left a company, and I had a boss I didn't get along with, and she and I just kept butting heads, and it ended up with me leaving the company. And I had a client that had gone with me to some cooking events. I was doing some stuff like boudin and beer down in New Orleans for the Emeril Lagasse Foundation, and he had gone with me to some of that stuff, and he said, why don't you come and consult for me? And I said, well, I really want to open this restaurant. And he said, well, this is perfect then, because you can set your own hours, you can work when you want to, and you can open your restaurant, and I'll be your first client. I'm 100% behind it. I love the food world, and so it offered me an opportunity to feed my family while I was trying to build out a restaurant.
Yeah.
And so that was very fortunate for me, and it came from years of networking and meeting the right people and talking about what I loved. And so we finally made the choice, and we jumped off, and it was a journey,
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's a lot. Well, let's talk about that, because the podcast is part of Food and Wine Pros. So there are a lot of people who are going to be listening to this thinking like, I love barbecue. I love all of this stuff. How do I make this start for myself? How do I find a partner? How do I find that kind of that place to do it? All of those nitty gritty things.
It's very, so I would say to anybody starting any restaurant is preparation. The more research you can do, the more people you can talk to that are in the restaurant business, sit down with them, pick their brain, go work in their restaurant for free on the weekends, do whatever you can do to educate yourself, because it all sounds great and romantic and fun. And the fact of the matter is, it's very hard on your marriage. It's very hard on a relationship. It's hard on your children. Because you just have to be there a lot. When we first opened, I think I was there every shift that we were open, every day, for at least the first year, if not the first 2 years. There wasn't a shift that I didn't work.
Yeah.
I had somebody else that had come along with me that had been cooking for years with me, that is now, he's my pitmaster and general manager, Steve Dresch, and he dedicated so much of his time as well. He was a welder by trade. He wanted to get out of welding and come and cook with me, and so he did. And it's a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of a lot of fights, a lot of with your spouse or soulmate, whoever, and a lot of time away from your children. You feel guilty about that.
Yeah.
You're trying to build something for your future and for their future if they want to do it, but the cost is you're gone a lot, and build spreadsheets, look up your ingredients, talk to the food service reps, talk to computer reps with point of sale. The more you know about all of that before you open your doors, the better off you're going to be.
And I know a lot of people end up going into business with family. Somehow it becomes a sort of a family affair. Like, so how have you managed to do this? How do you have that reconnection when you've been gone so much? How do you make time?
Well, so all three of my children worked in the restaurant. My wife worked in the restaurant some. She'll tell you I fired her. I didn't fire her. She didn't want me telling her what to do. And so and we would be standing up there at Expo, and she wouldn't be doing it the way that I wanted it done.
Yeah.
And, I'd say something to her about it, and she'd snap back, don't tell me what to do. And we are very both, we've been together 32 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we have very strong personalities, and we do not hold back. We listen to our podcast, the infamous slaw incident of 1995, on my Live from Bullshit Corner podcast.
Okay, everybody needs to subscribe to Live from Bullshit Corner.
So it was tough for us to work together.
Yeah.
And as a result, we don't.
Yeah.
She doesn't work in the restaurant. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't have a significant influence over the restaurant. She is one of the owners. And let me tell you, your partner is going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Whether they're there physically working or not. And my children worked there, which was great. And so that allowed us to spend time together there at the shop. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's very tough.
How old are they?
They're now, I've got a 21-year-old boy, a 20-year-old boy, and a 17-year-old girl.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so we're about to be empty nesters. Katie's about to go off to college.
Whoa.
And Conley's living in Portland, Maine. And Carey is in Nashville and is working with me right now.
So do you feel like I've had this conversation with a bunch of people who were born into barbecue and did not want to accept the mantle of this? Our friend Amy Mills had that. I'm thinking of who else are the people in? Sam Jones, who is I think fourth generation.
Yeah.
In Texas, Wayne Mueller,
Right.
multi-generation, and all of them ran from it and eventually came back and realized that they wanted to build this business for another generation, and some of them involve their kids in it. So where do you stand on that?
That's not unusual. I would love for all three of my children to be involved in it.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, this was my dream.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be their dream. I would be tickled to death if it is their dream and they want to be involved and for the long term. But you got to step back and you got to go, this is what I wanted to do, and I need to let my child live their life and pursue their passion, and it may not be the same as mine. So it's tough, and I'm trying to let them make those decisions and understand that it may be 10 years and one of them may come back and say, now I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. But you got to I feel like you have to let them do their own thing. And I think once they go do something else, if it was in the back of their mind, then they've got to come about it and they've got to want to be that part of it. If they're going to have the same passion that you do, it's got to come from their heart and not from pressure from me,
Yeah, that makes sense. And so there are a lot of people, I sort of feel like in barbecue more than in other parts of the food sector, being chefs, being bartenders, who had a different career beforehand. I'm thinking of our best new chef, Brian Furman. He told me he had a career as a welder. Before this, you mentioned somebody else who had a career as a welder. People.
Yeah, my GM and Pitmaster.
Yeah, and I feel like there are people who went and did something else for a while. I think like Wayne Mueller out of Texas, like he had a whole other career before this, or people were in all different fields. And then what is it about barbecue that makes it so people can do that, have this whole other background and then come into it?
I think, it's tough to come out of the gate and go, okay, I'm going to be a pitmaster and I'm going to start a restaurant. I mean, if you hadn't spent a lot of time doing it, you're probably not going to do very well. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people do it on nights and weekends while they have a career. And, for me, I started several different companies and I've had several different businesses. And I've had businesses that I started and failed. And one of the reasons we're successful now is from the lessons that I learned in the previous failures. And so I think that because barbecue takes a while for you to really feel like you're a pro at it, that you probably are going to have, you may have another career before. And unless you grew up in it, then you might, you might feel comfortable enough to say, all right, I'm going to take it over. But even growing up in it, I mean, my children can cook barbecue fine, but can they run the restaurant? Not at this age. They're, they don't have that skill set yet, and some of that just comes with time and maturity.
Yeah.
So
it takes a lot of that, and also is barbecue. I feel like it's a little bit kinder on the body than like working a line in a restaurant, if need be. I mean, it's definitely deeply, deeply physical work, but you can sit down sometimes.
Yeah, you can sit down sometimes because of the time involved, and a lot of it depends on what you're cooking on or how you're cooking,
Yeah.
and so there are certainly ways to where it doesn't have to be as physically agonizing as it has been in the past.
Yeah.
And that's a debate right now. I mean, there's a lot of debate on, hey, you get a lot of food writers that say, hey, if you're not burning down and shoveling coals under a pit all night, it's not real barbecue.
Oh, they get really mad about the gas barbecue.
Yeah,
Some people
I tell them to fuck off.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think that's a good response.
That's bullshit. And that's why I said on David Chang's show, Ugly Delicious, don't tell me how to cook my shit.
Yeah.
We manufacture pits that I designed and that we used to weld in my driveway.
Yeah.
That Steve Dresch and I did, and along with a lot of our other team members. We've got brick pits on the front of our restaurant where we burn down coals and we shovel them. But we also use gas assist pits. They're wood burning pits with a gas assist, and I have zero shame in using those. And because of the volume that we put out.
Yeah.
On a Saturday, we'll serve 350, 400 racks of ribs.
Whoa.
In one day.
How many customers is that?
Well, we'll do, on a Saturday, anywhere from 12 to 1,500 covers.
Oh, my goodness.
So, I mean, you're talking about really high volume, and we've kept the quality up. And one of the reasons that we're able to keep that quality up is because of the type of cooker that we're using. We're cooking with all hickory. It is gas assist, so you can go home at night. We cook fresh every day, but, like we talked about earlier, barbecue's about time and temperature and consistency. And if you have consistency in that pit, it's tough to cook ribs over a pit where you're shoveling coals all day and then be consistent. Some are going to get, it's tough to have them consistent in any kind of pit. But when you're shoveling coals, you get a lot of spikes in temperature, and it makes it tough. And I'm not dogging anybody that's shoveling coals. So, kudos to you. That's great. We do it when we feel like it, and when we're cooking whole hogs, and when we're cooking on our front pits, or when we're cooking on the pits that we design, which are all wood and charcoal burners. But judge the food that I put on your plate. Don't tell me how to get there. That's just, you're not the expert. I am. Yeah. And so don't tell me how to cook my shit.
Yeah.
You can judge it. I'll put it on your plate, and if it's not any good, then tell me. I can take it. But so far, people are lining up to get it, and so, you can make the argument all day that I'm cheating, but that's just bullshit.
Having had your barbecue on multiple occasions, I can't imagine somebody coming up to you and being like, well, at
Well,
you.
they do, and it's okay. Like I said, it's all right. They don't do it for a living.
Yeah.
You're going to go tell a high-end chef in New York that he can't sous vide because that's cheating? Who gives a shit? I mean, it's great. If it's great food, it's great food.
At the site where I used to work, our unofficial tagline was, if it tastes good, it is good.
That's right.
And I think
that's right. And it comes down to food snobbery or barbecue snobbery or bourbon snobbery. People can turn their nose down at different types of bourbon or different types of food. But the fact of the matter is, people like what they like.
Yeah.
And, if you want to make a living in this business, which is a very hard business, you better learn to give people what they like. And I'm not saying compromise and put out crappy stuff, but if you want to live with the classes, feed the masses.
Yeah.
If you want to live with the masses, feed the classes. I mean, it's very hard to make a living in high-end restaurants for a reason, because it's very hard to prepare that food, and there's a lot of waste, and there's a reason why certain brands are very successful. It's because people may not want to admit that they like it, but they like it.
Oh, people have their shame eats that
Hey, Fireball's a billion-dollar brand.
It's massive, and it felt like it came out of kind of nowhere. And it is one of those de facto, you're at a bachelorette party, there's going to be Fireball shots.
Nashville's the number one city for Fireball in the country.
It's such a big bachelorette city.
We are the number one bachelorette city in the country now.
Can we talk about the growth of Nashville? It's exploded with populations, with business. I talk to a lot of people from there who say they have a hard time hiring at restaurants because the population boom is out of control, and so that means restaurants are out of control, and there's so many places, so it's hard to get enough skilled workers.
It's very tough. So, and we pay well, but it's very tough to get good employees and to hire any employees right now. Nashville has more cranes in it than any other city in the country right now.
It's nuts
They
when you go
keep
there.
announcing new $500 million to $1 billion projects of large, 20-acre projects.
That's
The real estate has gone through the roof. One of the biggest problems is affordable housing. Even if you can find the people to work at your restaurant, they have trouble finding a place to live anywhere close. And so I'm a native Nashvilleian, born and raised, and a native Tennessean, and I love to see the growth of Nashville. I'm not somebody who's poo-pooing it or saying, oh, you're ruining our city.
Right.
If cities don't grow, they die, and Nashville is growing, and that's a good thing. But it is a very hard environment in the restaurant business, in the hospitality industry in general in Nashville right now, to find great employees. And so we try and treat our employees like family.
yeah.
We try and pay them well and give them good benefits. And as a result, we've got a lot of people who have stayed with us for a long time.
And what do you look for in an employee? Like, what's really important to you when you hire?
For us, it is about a customer experience. And so we are a cinder block, wall and concrete floor, counter service restaurant. Everything, we're 100% independent. We don't have any financial backers.
Oh.
We're not part of any group. It is my wife and I and everything that we own on the line. And 100%. We own our building. So we're a true independent. And we look for people. Every picture, every knickknack that's in our restaurant is a piece of our life. And so when you come in, we're welcoming you into our home and our life, and you're becoming a part of our story. And so we look for employees that believe in that story and that believe in the experience, and that the customer doesn't just walk away saying, I had a great meal.
Yeah.
They say, I had a great experience.
Oh, you remember how you feel when you go into a place.
Yeah.
So how do you, because you know this is a thing I care about very, very much, how do you take care of the people who work for you physically, mentally, all of those things? What do you do for them to make them feel safe and taken care of?
Yeah, and that's tough. And I know it's a passion of yours, and certainly feel strong about it myself. We're not open on Sundays, which in the barbecue world is like is unheard of.
Right.
And we've debated, and we still may open on Sundays at some point, but our managers are scheduled for 40 hours a week. They're not scheduled for 70 or 80 or 90. We're not trying to push people to the breaking point. We think that there's a work-life balance. We do employee outings. We try and do them once a quarter, where we take our employees out and we buy them drinks or dinner or lunch or have their families over. We'll do a Super Bowl party. And so, and then we truly care when somebody has an issue. They can come and talk to me. They're talking, they can talk to the owner. I'm there every day. And I may not be on the floor, but my office is there and the door is open. And so, I think that you have to, one, make sure that they feel like they're a part of that story and that family, which they are. They're an integral part. And two, I think you have to have a great rapport. And then you have to respect their, you have to respect their opinions and their feelings. And sometimes more than you want to legally these days.
Right. There's a lot going on.
But if you don't feel like they're an integral part of your business and care about them personally, then you're probably not a great operator.
Yeah.
I mean, I just believe that it's you don't want to have people serving your customer that don't believe in what they're doing.
Yeah. Do you ever have a circumstance, this is just something I'm asked a lot, where there is somebody working for you who you're worried about, and you, like, whether you feel their head's not in the game, or maybe they're overdoing it with some things, or just might have some personal circumstances. How do you have that conversation with them? How do you check in on them? What are the words you use? What is the physical circumstance in which you approach them for that?
We haven't had a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one incident with a employee that was in a abusive relationship that was deeply concerning to me and to my wife, and really we worried about her, and we felt very strongly about it. My way of dealing with it was that I went down. I did, and you don't want to crawl into their personal life, and so you don't want to pry too much. I don't know how much she wanted to talk about it. The way that I dealt with it was I went down to the YWCA and I asked them how I should deal with it.
Yeah.
I got information from them. I got a card from them, and I listened to what they had to say. And then I brought the employee in. And I said, look, I don't know what's going on in your life, and I don't want to get, I don't want to be somewhere you don't want me to be.
Yeah.
What I do want you to know is that we love you, and that we think that you should be respected for who you are, and that you have a lot of worth, and that you are important.
Yeah.
And so if you want to talk, we're here. And, and here is some information. And I don't know if you need it or not, but if you do, I want you to know that we can provide a safe place for you. And, that's how I handled it. And I don't know any other way to handle it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was the right thing.
You know what? I don't think there's a rule book for it, and it sounds like you took the right steps for it too. But I think people are so afraid of awkward conversations or making it worse. And I always say, just have the conversation, and read it as you're going into it, and see how they're responding to it, what their body language is, and how they're feeling about it. And as a boss, I think you have to do that.
I think that my opinion on that situation was she needed to know that people loved her and cared about her, and she had a tough childhood.
Yeah.
And so probably over the years, her self-esteem had been beaten down.
Yeah.
And you hate to see that. She had a beautiful personality, and was a beautiful person, and really deserved, like everybody, to be happy and to feel safe. And so we tried to make her feel that way at work and with us. And in the personal life, she has to decide whether she wants to get help. But I think you need to let them know that you're there. If they want to seek help, then you're there to give them a helping hand.
Yeah, I think that is a really reasonable and good way. You can't force anybody into taking care of themselves. Yeah. So if we can talk about your business called Peg Leg Porker for a reason.
That's right.
Let's talk about that.
I'm a fat, ball-headed, one-legged man is why. So I literally am the Peg Leg Porker.
I love that. Yeah. So, it's something that I really want to talk to you about, like, for Food and Wine, is have, like, people with all different bodies, like, in the kitchen and stuff. So you lost your leg to cancer.
I did.
Yeah.
So I lost my leg to osteogenic sarcoma bone cancer when I was 17. It was the summer before my senior year. And, I was able to move forward from it. I had a very good support system with family and church and friends. And so, and I had gone through something earlier in my life that had really bothered me with my parents' divorce. It was very hard on me. And so when the cancer came along, it just didn't seem to bother me that much, because I already felt like I'd gone through something that I felt like was worse.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when you have cancer yourself, you don't feel that bad. It didn't affect me nearly as much as it affected my mother and my sister.
Yeah.
And later my father got cancer, and that was much more. I was much more affected by that than by my own. Yeah. It's very hard to see a loved one go through it. For me, going through it myself, I was like, well, what are you gonna do? I mean, let's get moving forward here.
Yeah, it's always just been to me, like, it's just a fundamental just part of who you are. Like the fact that you call yourself Peg Leg Porker.
Yeah, I mean,
So does that then open it up for other people who just have whatever stuff going on with their bodies to work with you, around you, consult with you?
I don't have a whole lot work with me or around me or consult with me. I do have a lot of people consult with me. So, and I just got a text on Facebook with a guy that I don't know that follows us. He reached out, said my wife has got stage 4 synovial sarcoma, and she's about to lose her leg above the knee.
Yeah.
And do you have any advice? And I told him about my experience some, and having a positive attitude, having positive people around her, and then trying to find a good prosthetist so that you get a fit and it doesn't shy you away from wearing a leg. And he reached back out and said, "Wow, I didn't think you would answer me, and I'm so glad you did, and that makes me feel better." And so, what I try and do is, if people reach out, is respond. We've got shirts that say "Limping ain't easy." We have we have a lot of amputees, a lot of people in wheelchairs, a lot of people with bum knees or hips that come in and buy those shirts. They love them, and it adds a little bit of humor to a situation that might not be so full of laughs.
Yeah.
And that's, if I can do that, then I think that's. Then that's great. I work with some different charities, for amputees, and we're happy to support it. But most of what I get is in the form of questions or, "Hey, I can relate, and thank you for having a positive attitude."
Yeah. So has that affected just how you look at restaurant design or anything? Because my mother has had disabilities her whole life and stuff, and is in a wheelchair now and things, and it
Right.
greatly, and she's in a nursing home and can't really go out to places anymore.
Yeah.
But it really informed where we could go to eat.
Oh, sure.
Because before she could do that, she would have to go somewhere where she would have to have her leg propped up, and you could tell when the people who work there were like, "We have to accommodate her," or
Yeah.
when I go out with my older relatives, the eye roll about like, "Oh, I guess we have to deal with that." And there's a training of front of house people, and also just of how spaces are designed, that I think could be a lot more thoughtful.
I think so. We, of course, we keep accommodations in mind with what we do. For me, for my mobility, one, also for the customer. I think my employees are fairly sensitive to it because they see me every day, and they understand that some things are not as easy for me to get around or to do. I think it's very important. And I think that people need to understand that even if they look at you and think, "Oh, he's normal, he's fine, he's just, his legs cut off, but he's whining about it a little," then what they need to understand is, even though they may be a close friend and think it's nothing to you, it's still, like the airport today. I mean, I got off the flight and they ask if I want a wheelchair, and you're like, how far is it?
If it's JFK, it's very far.
And some people say, "Well, it's not that far." And you're like, "Well, but I have one leg." For me, what you call not too far and what I call not too far are two very different things.
Yeah.
And so those do become issues. They're ones that people ought to be a little more sensitive to. It is not, and it's not a shameful thing, but it's a self-conscious thing. So when your mom sees a relative roll their eyes, or when I have somebody, you feel it, and you take it. You're tough, but you're like, man, you just don't understand. For an amputee, it takes twice the effort to go half the distance.
Yeah.
And that's just a physical, it's not due to it's not really the leg or the equipment that you have. It is a physical limitation of your body because of your circulation system. You've lost a quarter of your circulation system.
Yeah.
Your body does not process oxygen the same way. And so I think that the restaurant world could be a lot more accommodating to that.
I full on agree with you about that. Like it's, I think, restaurants, the restaurant industry is in turnaround about a whole lot of different kind of things.
Sure.
So you're you have this business that's going on and things. Who are you seeing coming up who is really exciting to you, and you think that, like, because you seems like you were mentored by some really great people. So who's coming up?
I was, I think, well, Brian Furman is one who's done extremely well and is coming up. He's got a great personality. He's a great guy, and he
so
produces
lovely.
a great food. Zach Parker in Tennessee, down in Lexington, he took over his father, Ricky Parker, died at a young age.
He did, yes.
Was B.E. Scott's Barbecue.
Okay, yeah.
Zach, I met Zach probably when he was 15 or 16, working for his dad, and I've known him throughout the years, and he's starting to come into his own. He was thrown in even though he'd been around barbecue all his life, to be thrown into a restaurant at age 20 or 21 without the mentor that was teaching you be there anymore is a tough thing, and he's done an outstanding job. And so I'm glad to see him. Down in New Orleans, you got the boys from Blue Oak Barbecue.
I'm so interested in what they're doing.
Are doing a great job, and good guys. And so there are people all over the country, and there's a renaissance, sort of a lot of different barbecue guys coming into it. And
women.
And women doing a lot. My wife is competing against me at Memphis in May this
What?
year. Yeah,
Oh.
straight up head to head. She's 2 booths away.
Tell me about this
in
trash
whole hog.
talk that must be happening.
Oh yeah, we're trash talking each other. Yeah.
What is her
big time?
What is her team called? What's your team called?
My team is the Peg Leg Porkers, which has always been. Her team is called I Only Smoke When I Drink. So she is ready to go. She'll be cooking on one of our smokers, so we'll both be cooking on the same smokers.
Level playing field.
We're both competing in whole hog, and so it'll be fun.
Oh my gosh, to be behind the wall.
It'll be fun. But neither one of us take it too serious.
Yeah.
And so that's what's fun about it.
Yeah.
Is that we could go down, we could trash talk, and we can have fun, and I think it'll be a good time.
Yeah, and also I love that that you have that spirit in it, but also with the people coming up, I feel like there are more people of color who are reclaiming barbecue, and that's really important. And women.
Yeah,
and
Howard Conyers has made a big splash. He's actually a rocket scientist.
Where's he?
He's down in New Orleans.
I'm gonna find him.
Then a lot of these women have been in it for years that have just simply been overlooked in some circles. You have Leslie Roark down in Yazoo City, Mississippi, with U-Bonds, and Melissa Cookston has always made a big splash. But there are a lot of other women down at Memphis in May that and in competition and out there and owning restaurants. There's a lot of others that are out there making a big splash, but they just haven't gotten the press that they deserve. And so, and I don't know why that is. It for me, we have a lot of women on our staff. I love them. They're generally hard workers, and they, I trust the women on my staff. My number 2 in my organization is a woman.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that, I guess it just came over the years, but I don't know where these women who have cooked just as prominently as men have not been recognized the same way.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the most recent series of Queer Eye, but there are 2 sisters who own a barbecue place, and they made over their whole lives and their shop. And
oh, wow.
They had this sauce that they had at the restaurant, and they'd always wanted to take to market, but didn't really know how to do that.
Yeah.
They put it on the show, and like overnight,
blowing up.
I think last I looked, it's probably bigger at this point. They had sold like 11,000 bottles over a weekend or something.
That's great.
And America fell in love with these 2 women, and it was just
great.
the most special thing in the world. I think they were around Kansas City because that's where the season was.
Well, that's great. My wife and daughter probably saw it. They love that show and that drag race. That's their 2 favorite shows. They want to put me on Queer Eye and get a makeover. I told them no way.
Okay, let's put this out into the universe, because
This is not going to happen. Let's just put it right there.
well, I think hopefully we have Anthony from Carey as an upcoming guest on here. So whether you want it or not, this is happening.
No.
But you were saying they want to do that for you. A question that I ask everybody is, you do all these things for other people. You're taking care of family and business and all this. What's the thing you want for you?
I'm doing the thing that I want for me. I travel a lot now. I cook a lot of different events. I'm busy. We're very busy at the shop, and then we have our other businesses with the spirits and the smokers and the food. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you need to, take some time for yourself." The fact of the matter is, most people that are like me thrive on this, and I can bitch and complain about it sometimes, but if I weren't doing it, I would be unhappy. So if you talk about something I like to go do and relax, we've got a lake house, and just being at the lake house is it's been in my family for 60 years, and being down on Pickwick Lake is a huge thing for me. Just I can go and kind of let it all go down there and not stress about it.
Yeah.
But other than that, most people in my industry we feed off of that stress. I think, for people to say they don't, they most of them do.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love barbecue people.
Yeah.
So we have a speed round.
Yeah, okay.
So,
all right.
What is your comfort food?
Biscuits and gravy.
You are not the only person to say that
Yeah.
either. Is there a particular place you like to go for it? Because I know you have biscuit love in your town.
Yeah, biscuit love is great. Actually, probably my more in the same vein, but that probably was my favorite thing growing up is chipped beef on toast.
Oh, shit on a shingle?
Well, shit on a shingle. So I would say that the distinction is shit on a shingle is shit on shingles usually ground beef in gravy, whereas chipped beef on toast is chipped beef, which most people probably hadn't been exposed to these days.
I love that stuff.
I love
it's
it.
So
it's
comforting.
Great. The little like the Hormel in the little jar or the Armor in the little jar.
That's exactly what I was picturing.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that. What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
I had a meal the other night at Taylor in Nashville that totally changed my perception of. I went, and it's supposed to be Indian type food, and I thought, I don't like Indian food, and 'cause I'd had it like once or twice maybe. I think I had it in Amsterdam, and I went and had this meal the other day, Sunday night, as a matter of fact, and it totally 100% changed my perception of that type of food. And in fact, his father, it's Vivek's Surrey in Nashville, his father was there and his mother, and his father is trying to convince him to change it, to not say Indian food, to say South Asian with American influence. So that people don't have that. I think some people just say, oh, I don't like Indian food.
They just haven't had the right stuff.
And just hadn't had the right thing. But a meal that made me emotional, I was at the Southern Foodways Alliance, and Ashley Christensen did a lunch.
I was there.
And I don't know why.
I still think about that meal all the time.
I don't know why, but it physically made me kind of emotional. And I have no idea why, but it was a dynamite meal.
Yeah.
But for something triggered me that that made me compelled. I had to go up and say something to her after the meal. And Ashley and I are good friends, but I felt like physically compelled to go and tell her how much I enjoyed that meal.
I was at that meal too, and it was funny because it was in the middle of a barbecue symposium, and she served an all vegetable meal.
Yeah,
that was the most baller thing.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And it was so special.
But it was very good.
I think about that meal like once a week.
Yeah, it was great.
It's so great. What is the last meal that somebody made for you in their home?
I went over to a buddy's house, and we were. He's one of my old friends, and he and his wife, and they made steak. They made filet medallions.
That's really nice.
It was great.
People don't cook for chefs, and
yeah,
it's such a thing.
Well, I'm not a chef, so I'm not classically trained. I cook barbecue, but people do get intimidated sometimes, and they shouldn't be. Because we like all kinds. We love everything.
I want to make you some chipped beef on toast.
Yeah, I love it. I would welcome it.
So this question, because of where you live, is going to be interesting. What living musician would you want to cook for, and what would you cook them?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
And in fact, I just tweeted out one of my favorites. Literally died today. Earl Thomas Conley.
I'm so sorry.
No, I didn't know him, and I never saw him, but he was loved his music. I'm trying to think of who is a living musical artist that I would love to cook for.
Living in Nashville, I figured.
We have a lot come in.
Yeah.
We've had several, a lot of musicians come in. But if I had to personally cook for one that's living, I guess.
It's a tough one for a lot.
That's a very tough one. I'm trying to think. Kat, I'm at a loss.
We can come back to one.
All
I have
right,
one
we'll
other
have to come back.
Okay, the other one is you have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. What do you do?
Sit at the lake and do nothing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Just stare into space.
Yeah. Just have a drink.
And say a musician walks up to you.
Yeah.
Who is this?
Oh gosh.
Like, what's the thing that's on repeat in your music device or your feed?
I like Sturgill. I tell you who would be a great one. Al Green.
Oh yeah,
Al Green.
What would you make for Al Green?
I just had a friend. I ate something the other day down at Pesh that was catfish over greens with the pot liquor kind of over the catfish.
Yeah.
And I learned how to make greens gumbo from a recipe from Marcel Bienvenu years ago from a symposium. I'd like to make that fried catfish dish over greens gumbo. So it'd be potato salad base with greens and then the fried catfish on top with and ladle the pot liquor over it.
Look out, Al Green.
I think that would be a good one.
Oh my gosh, I think that's a great place for this. Thank you so much today to our guest, Carey Bringle. You can find him at Peg Leg Porker on all the different social things. You can find him in Nashville. Look for his bourbon on your shelf. And if it's not in your state yet, go and talk to the people who are responsible for that. And thank you so much to our producers, Jennifer Martinick, Alicia Cabral, and Amy Frank. Thanks to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend, write a review, or rate us because those stars and comments matter. If there is something you'd like us to talk about or a guest you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can find me on Twitter at KittenWithAWhip. Find out more about the show and catch up on all of the episodes at foodandwine.com and Food and Wine's YouTube page. Thanks for listening and take good care of yourself until the next time.